Greetings, this is Brother Jamoke with Reparations Now podcast. We're here today to bring you another installment of Reparations Now podcast. We honor our ancestors and the work that we do, and we do this for our children and those yet unborn. We'd like you to take a minute and consider to subscribe to our channel, share our channel with other people, leave some comments during the show. Today, I'm very excited to bring, as a part of, again, the sub-series that we've been doing within Reparations Now podcast, what we call Conversations with Our Elder. And today's special guest is a titan, is a giant in the world of politics in New York. And he says he considers himself a revolutionary using the platform of politics to advance his mission. So as we like to do with all our guests, we're very excited to have Charles Barron as our guest today. We'd just like you to introduce yourself. What do you think people need to know about you? Let's say maybe this is the first time someone's hearing about you. What is important for people to know about you? And then how did you get connected to the reparations movement?
Well,
go ahead. And you can, I was gonna say, and you can take time to tell your story, because that's why we do call this Conversation with Our Elders, because we know some of you all have some very rich stories around, your sojourn into the reparations movement.
Well, October 7th marked my 74th year of birth on this earth, and I'm honored to say that I share that birthday with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, with Mary Baraka, and a few others. I had started my activism on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I lived in the Lillian Wald projects. Y'all call them the housing development. We call them the PJs, the projects. And I read a book when I was about 16, 17 years old called The Last Days of the Congo, about Patrice Lumumba and how he liberated the Congo. And I just admired him so much. And then I read a book on Malcolm X's autobiography, and I got involved in the Black Panther Party in Harlem. Two brothers, one by the name of Tony Martin, the other brother by the name of Mark Holder, used to always come down to the Lower East Side to sell their papers, and I would be debating and arguing with them. And they said, why don't you just come up to Harlem and see what we're doing? And I'm so glad I did, because they were feeding children breakfast. And that's when I signed up, and I brought my papers down to the Lower East Side and did my work with Felipe Luisiano and the Young Lords and others who were on the Lower East Side. And I did the Panther papers on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. But I did get a chance to meet Afeni Shakur and Tupac Shakur's mother. I got a chance to meet Seth Wiles, Michael Tabor, powerful brother, and Joanne Chesimard and Joan Bird and my man Jamal Joseph. So I got to meet them. They didn't know me, but I knew them, and I was just a little teenager. And then from there, after my Panther experience, I joined Reverend Herbert Daughtry in the Black United Front. Reverend Daughtry had a program at City College, City University of New York, at Hunter College, where I got my bachelor's degree. I had a program called In the Spirit of the 60s, and I invited Reverend Daughtry, Atala Shabazz, Malcolm X's daughter, and Richie Perez, a member of the Young Lords, and my good friend. And from there, I joined the Black United Front, became the Harlem chapter chairperson of the Black United Front. From there, I became Reverend Daughtry's chief of staff. We went across the country building the Black United Front, a mass-based Black Pan-Africanist revolutionary organization. We had our founding convention in Brooklyn, New York, at the theater at the theater in Brooklyn, and I would say about 1,000 people came, representing 5 foreign countries and 40 states, and we established the National Black United Front. After my United Front experiences, then I started a leadership training group called Dynamics of Leadership, and did leadership training all across the country. And then I decided we need power. All these demonstrations, screaming and hollering, we got to get some power. And I saw the power of this New York City Council, where they passed the multi-billion-dollar budget to determine what's going to be built on city-owned land. So I said I'll be able to stop gentrification, because the local council member has the power to approve or disapprove housing development projects. So I went into the city council and won in 2001. We beat the machine. We were independent. And we ran in the Democratic primary. The Democratic Party hates us because we're not a part of them. We use them like they use Black people. And we were able to beat them. And the most powerful Democratic Party machine is the Brooklyn Kings County Democratic Organization, is the most powerful one in the country. We and our organization, Operation Power, people organizing and working for empowerment and respect, we beat the machine. And then I became the city council member in East New York. I was in the city council for 14 years. My wife decided to run for the state assembly. She ran and she won, Inez Barron. And when I was term limited out of the city council, she ran for my seat, and then I ran for her state assembly seat, and I won that. So for 21 years, I have 14 years in the New York City Council, and I have 7 years in the State Assembly.
All right. And then in terms of how you got connected to reparations specifically.
Started in the New York State Assembly. Queen Mother Moore was someone who I admired so much. Every time she came to our meetings, she said, "Pay me my reparations." And she was out of Harlem and goes way, way back. So I decided to do a Queen Mother Moore reparations bill in the city council. Fought hard. It didn't get a hearing. It didn't get to the floor. And then when I went to the New York State Assembly, I once again said, I'm going to do a New York State community reparations bill on remedies. I got tired of them talking about they're going to study us. We don't need to be studied anymore. Just pay up the reparations. And I found out in New York City, it was the second largest slave holding city in the country, only second to Charleston, South Carolina. So we said, hey, New York abolished slavery in 1827. It stayed around to about 1840. But New York had more slavery than any other southern city but Charleston, South Carolina. So it took me 2 or 3 years to finally get it past the New York State Assembly, 150 members of the assembly. I got over 107 people voted for my bill. And then we had to try to get it in the Senate. And that was 63 members of the Senate. We got as much as 27 members of the Senate. And then these sellout, sycophant Negroes who decided they wanted to change my bill, Senator James Sanders and Senator Leroy Comrie, they decided that they wanted to give Auntie Hochul, the white governor, a play in the bill, because my bill said it's a community bill. So if we're going to have a commission, I said the commission will be comprised of 11 people. And the majority would come from the community, 2 from and Cobra, 2 from the December 12th movement, and 2 from the Institute of the Black World. That's 6. The governor will have 1, the state assembly would have 2, and the state senate would have 2, 6, 5. So the community could select the commission. And I did that because we need the power on the front end, because on the back end, after all the work is said and done, it has to go back to the state assembly, to the state legislature for approval, and then finally to the state state governor. So what these sellout Negroes did, they decided that they're going to change my bill. I did all the work and research. They left that, and they just changed 1 line. Instead of 2, 4, 6 for the community groups, they said 3 for the white governor Hochul, 3 for the head of the assembly, and 3 for the head of the Senate, and none for the community. And that's the bill they passed. But it's still my bill, and we're still going to fight, because next to that, we're going to have millions more for reparations and send in our recommendations anyhow.
That's right. Yeah, as many of us in the reparations movement who's been outside, I just wanted to just make a little point too. You said you hit on one person's name, Joanne Chesimard, and I just wanted to acknowledge that for some people who may know her. Sada Shakur, right. And so, yeah, I just wanted to add that little tidbit. But So, many of us in the reparations movement were really excited about your bill because your bill, unlike HR 40, unlike other state or even city municipal bills, did put a greater weight on the community selection of people to be on the commission. And so that's what really had your bill stand out in terms of a lot of other bills, or even bills that call themselves, community commissions and things like that. But you actually had it structured where the community had a greater weight. And then that's the one thing they took out, unfortunately.
Right. So, but you know what? We claiming victory anyway, because they weren't even talking about reparations.
Right.
That in there. So they did their little manipulation. But now with the December 12th movement, we're going to do some hearings and all of that stuff right alongside what they do. So whatever they come up with, we're going to match that. And because reparations, the bottom line, it's either going to be litigation, legislation, or revolution, or hitting the streets, or going from block to block, demanding our reparation, or saying cities will not be able to function unless we get compensated for those years of labor, free labor. So we're going to keep battling it. And we're still claiming that bill, because if it wasn't for our bill, they wouldn't even be talking about reparations. All the sellout Negroes that want to jump on the board the last minute, you could have done that because you were in there before me. You could have done that a long time ago. So we consider it a real victory. And I want to say this real quick. We cannot allow all our oppressors to determine what the compensation is. And we can't allow our oppressors to determine the composition of who will determine what the compensation is. So, California got something passed, but, they were able to, in California, I think it's 5 appointees by the governor, 4 by the state legislature for 9. They did the work. They put in the recommendations, and the governor said, we don't have the money right now. Yeah, right. And so we can't let them say, oh, we have reparations. We're going to give scholarships out. Or we're going to give these programs for housing. Or we're going to give y'all something for youth programs. No people ever allow your oppressor to determine your compensation. So we got to understand that. And then here's an important one, brother. There are certain things that we ought to get out of the budget without reparations. See, reparations is a debt owed for centuries of uncompensated labor, slavery. So when a state says, we're going to give y'all $25 million for housing or $50 million for scholarships, we should get that because we are tax-paying folk in this budget that's not giving us our fair share out of the budget anyway. So I don't need you to tell me what the compensation should be. We think you should start off with 50 billion just on healthcare alone. And we'll see that as a down payment for the trillions that you owe us. So you cannot determine that. And Black people shouldn't allow states to say, like Barack Obama said, I'm not for reparations, but I am for economic development in the Black community. We're supposed to have that anyway.
Yes, sir.
We're supposed to have that anyway. That ain't no reparations. That's what's due us, because you've taken our money and not returning it to our communities. You're taking our money and giving Israel bombs to kill babies in Palestine, setting up military bases in Africa. I stumbled because I get so angry at that. Several military bases in Africa. That's not what I want my money to go for. AFRICOM. That's what both parties do, whether it's going to be Trump or Kamala. Both parties are supporting the bombs to kill babies in Israel. Both parties are supporting the military bases building in Africa instead of humanitarian aid. Both parties are supporting neo-colonialism in Africa so that the multinational corporations can continue to rape Africa of its natural resources, whether it's gold, diamonds, cobalt, uranium, all of that. This is why the revolution in Africa is happening with young people in the Sahel region. They're saying, France, America, get the hell out of Africa.
That's right.
And on your way out, leave the uranium, because that's ours.
That's
and
right.
How dare you take uranium to light up Europe and keep Africa in the dark? So these are the kinds of things we need reparations for revolution. We don't just need reparations to get caught up into the capitalist system and its materialism. We need reparations for liberation, for revolution.
Yes. So you want to expound on that a little bit more? Like, what are some of the distinctions between reparations and public policy that the United States government should be doing anyway?
Absolutely. See, for instance, Inez and I have been in the city electoral arena for about 34 years combined. We were able to get over $240 million for 3 new schools built from the ground up. These were 3 new schools built from the ground up. We were able to get $112 million to renovate parks in our neighborhood. Excuse me. To renovate parks in our neighborhood. We were able to get 6,000 jobs. We were able to get a new youth center for $20 million. That's not reparations. That's what we should get out of city budgets. The city budget is $112 billion. Y'all hear me? $112 billion. That's what the city budget is. Out of that budget, we got 30 and 40% poverty in Black communities in New York. We got double-digit unemployment. We got homelessness or houseless people. We fight for those things because we pay billions of dollars worth of taxes, and we're supposed to get that out of the budget, out of the regular budget. Reparations is a debt owed. That is separate, totally separate from what you're supposed to get out of the budgets. You're supposed to get health care. You should get it for free, like it is in Cuba and Venezuela, both places where I've been to. You should get it for free, like it's in Zimbabwe. I've been there. Yet the richest country in the world can't supply free health care and free education for its people, especially Black people who are giving all this money into your budget. The reparations is a multi-trillion-dollar debt owed. And we should take that money and they should pay it to us, and we should decide what we want to do with it, whether it means individual money for individuals, whether it means $50 million for $50 billion worth of health care, or whether it means sitting down with the indigenous people who you stole this land from and talk about how we can share the land and build things. So we have to make sure that we don't confuse reparations, a debt owed, for what you're supposed to be struggling for and get out of the budgets in every city and every state in the United States of America.
Yeah. So so many, I think that one of the challenges in the movement, in the reparations movement, is we haven't had enough conversation on what reparations should look like. And so people who are newer to the reparations movement, like you said, may not get those distinctions and may think that, scholarships and things like that, it does is considered as reparations. And there's still a lot of conversation in terms of what is reparations.
See, we're supposed to get scholarships.
Right.
We're supposed to get these,
or like you said, just free education, period, like they do in other countries.
We forget that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the African People's Socialist Party under the leadership of Omali Yeshitela. In 1982, they had an international forum on reparations. In 1982, and they established then that this is what reparations should be. Trillions of dollars, I think 4 to 6 trillion. And they laid it out. They had experts in economics and come from all over the world, professors, activists, and they came up with that. See, in my bill, I said this: a people have been injured and compensation is due. So my bill will determine the amount, the form, and who should receive it. Period. We don't need no help from you, and we will not be manipulated by any group saying, oh, one group of African people should get it and another group of Africans shouldn't get it. We are all African people, whether you came from the Caribbean, whether you came from South America, Central America, whether you came from the continent, or whether you were born here. We are an African people, because when those boats left Africa, you had no other identity but African. Dr. John Henry Clark said, we're not who we are based upon where the ships dropped us off. We are who we are based upon where the ships picked us up from. They dropped you off in America, and you established the identity of your oppressor. They dropped you off in Jamaica. They dropped you off in Trinidad. They dropped you off in Brazil. But when they dropped you off, you were African. And then you established the identity of the place where the slave ships dropped you off. We are an African people, a dispersed nation of African people. We're not a race of people. We are a nation of people. We have a continent, we have a culture, and we have politics. Africa was built on communalism, which is a root word in the collective decision-making process and delivering of resources, like socialism and communism, communalism. When you want to know how you oppress, just read the title of your system. Capitalism, capital, profit is the priority for those at the top. Feudalism was the monarchs, and it was the landlords, the lords of the land, the people in England that were for the kings and royalty oppressed the slaves, the serfs, and the peons of that during that period. When you look at the names of the system, it'll tell you gentrification. They're telling you gentry. Gentry is the elite class. We want you out of your community. We want to come back. So we are an African people dispersed throughout the diaspora. Africa is our homeland. Prioritization should be given to the liberation of Africa under socialism, the unification and liberation of Africa under socialism. In the 1960s, most of the African revolutionaries were socialists. Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, and we had Patrice Lumumba of the Congo, Sekou Touré of Guinea, and we had Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. All of these brothers, they were talking socialism. And then we get caught up in capitalism and the system because we're in the belly of the beast. So we have to remember that we must maintain our communal value system.
Yeah, sounds like we need to incorporate some classes in economics as a part of our reparations conversation. Right. You know, I was an economic major in school, and, you know, it was really fascinating to me to learn that as an economic system, actually socialism does better than capitalism, just in terms of sheer, based on their measurements of what makes an efficient, you know, economic system, whether you're talking about poverty, whether you're talking about job creation, whether you're talking about inflation rate, whether you're talking about all of these indices of economics. Yeah, so it's and I think that we need to bring that. I like the way you broke that down with the first part of the word, gentry and communal, and that was very. I think we need to consider as popular education in the reparations movement. Now, I don't want to get you in any trouble, but I'm going to ask a question that just popped up to me, which was, so are you familiar with the current makeup of the state New York Commission? And I know like Ron Daniels is on there representing IBW, and so how do you feel about the current New York State Commission composition, even though it wasn't what you had intended?
Well, first of all, Ron Daniels was one of the persons we had in our bill, his organization. So I have no problem with him being on there. And Laurie Flavors, who also does great work in our community, have no problems with her. The rest, I never heard of these people. How could Hochul, a white governor, pick some black people to deal with reparations? Yeah, I got problems with those appointees. That's why I didn't want them to do it. And then you have our neo-colonial puppets of the Democratic Party that's heading up the state assembly, Carl Hastie, and heading up the Senate, Andrea Stewart Cousins. You know, New York City, New York State is the state of neocolonialism. This is the era of neocolonialism. The new way to colonize Black people is to put Black faces in high places to espouse the same white policies and budgets that the white men predominantly would have done. So they put these people in place, and then capitalism is so wealthy, they can give you a little something, something to make you think you're making progress. So when you look at New York State, the state attorney general, Letitia James, a Black woman. The head of the assembly, a Black man. The head of the Senate, a Black woman. The mayor of New York, he don't know whether he's blue or Black because he's more for the cops than he is for his people, a Black man. The speaker of the city council, a Black woman. The public advocate, a Black man. The head of some of the boroughs, president of Brooklyn, a Black Latino. A head of the borough president of the Bronx, Black. DAs, district attorneys, Black. Most powerful union leaders, Black. All of those Black faces in high places represents neocolonialism. That's what they did in Africa. When the colonialism came to Africa, all of the white Europeans were heading up and leading and presidents and prime ministers of the African states. And then when Africans said, wait a minute, 20 million of us and 1 million of you got to go. And when the revolutionary movements rose up, then the white man said, hey, let's find some puppets that will let us keep control over the land, the resources, but we'll give them political independence, a new flag, a new name of the country, a new political party. Let's put our puppets in place. Africa is suffering from neocolonialism, and we're suffering from a form of domestic neocolonialism right in New York State and other states across this country. There's no way you should stop a bill that an African man, we did, stop a bill that's saying African people should select, and these are African people with an ideology, not some Black faces in high places that the machine put up there to make you think you made progress. So yes, I'm not pleased with this composition at all, because the people who selected them should not have been doing that.
Is there, I think you mentioned, is there an advisory committee that was created to go along with a community advisory committee? That was
No, and all of that, and anything that says advice is no power. We got to be about power.
Yes.
Nobody no damn advice. We got to be about power. Power is the great equalizer. When we realize the importance of gaining power, because that's what's going to lead us to liberation. You know, power makes racism irrelevant. The Black Panther Party, we said in our first edict of the 10-point program, we want the power to control the destiny of our Black and oppressed communities. That is key, my brother, in the 21st century. Martin Luther King said we live in domestic colonies, and power, economic and political power, needs to be transferred to the people of the ghetto, that's what he called it back then, so that they can control their own destiny. That's what new politics is all about. That's a quote from Martin Luther King. Even he understood. And that's why in his last years, 67, 68, when he was talking to Harry Belafonte, he said, you know what, Harry, I think I've been trying to integrate into a burning house. That burning house was colonial capitalism. See, colonialism and the colonial mode of production is why Israel is oppressing the Palestinians. Colonialism and the colonial mode of production is why we live in domestic colonies called Black communities of a colonial capitalist system. So when you put the colonial subjects that the white power structure puts in place, then you're going to maintain that same poverty. Look at this. We had a Republican president. We had Democratic presidents. We had a Black president. Barack Obama probably will get a Black first Black woman president, Kamala Harris. I won't be voting for. We're going with Dr. Cornel West and Melina Abdullah, so we can make revolution on the bottom up, not the top down. But listen, both parties are supporting the sustenance of poverty in our Black communities. Both parties are supporting the exploitation of Africa and the so-called Middle East. Both parties are supporting a $800 billion bloated military budget. Even AOC and the so-called squad, they even support that budget. AOC was talking about she's supporting Biden. So both parties are supporting colonial capitalism. So when people say, but Charles, we got to stop Trump. So we got to go with Kamala so we can stop Trump. Well, you might stop Trump. And I'll tell you what you won't be stopping on November 5th. I'll tell you who'll still be in office on November 5th. Capitalism.
That's right.
Poverty. Imperialism. Imperial wars abroad. I tell you who'll still be in office. Homelessness. I tell you who'll still be in office. All the cop cities that they're building in Atlanta and New York, across the country, that Black politicians are supporting. I'll tell you that for sure. But if we go with, somebody said, but if you go with Cornel West, he can't win. I said, we already won, because he's on 45 states across the country. And our goal, our definition of victory, never let your enemy define victory for you. Our definition of victory is that if he gets on the ballot in all those countries, states, after November 5th, we're going to go to those states and get more Charles Barron likes into the city councils, Black radicals, revolutionaries elected, so that we can stop gentrification in East New York. Bed-Stuy is being gentrified. Crown Heights is being gentrified. Harlem is being gentrified. Canarsie is being gentrified. Not East New York, because the Barron said, hell no, you're not coming in here. When I came into East New York with Operation Power and Inez, we were 90% Black and brown. Today, we are 90% Black and brown.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Yes, yes. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and thank you for that. I think we definitely have to have a colonial analysis, a capitalist analysis, a power analysis. So have you been keeping up with the the New York City reparations? I know they just recently passed a bill at the city level, city council.
Yes, I have. The city council bill will be similar to the state. They're talking about let Mayor Adams, select the commission. That should tell you enough right there. I shouldn't have to say any more. But anytime that you're giving it to the state to pick the commission, to the city to pick the commission, you're making a big mistake, because they already will have the power at the end of the process to approve or disapprove the recommendations coming from the commission. So at least we should have the power at the front end to select the commission and determine the compensation. So that's going to be same old story, the same old stuff. But I'll say this, at least we got them talking about reparations. At least we got them passing legislation. Now we got to do what's necessary for us to make reparations real. We got to bring it to the streets. We got to mobilize and organize. There are 2 million Africans, so-called Black people in New York City. 2 million. All we need is a couple of 100,000 to say this city ain't moving until we have a Black agenda, and this is what you must respond to in this Black agenda. Don't send these sellout Negroes to now dilute what Malcolm lived for, what Martin lived for, what Fannie Lou Hamer lived for, what the Black Panther Party lived for, what Black nationalists, revolutionary nationalists, cultural nationalists live for, what Africans that are supporting us live for. Don't let these sellouts, I call them sycophants, PSYCOPHANTS, Sycophant. Sycophants. A sycophant is one who sucks up to people in power, brown noses people in power, kisses parts of the anatomy of people in power for their personal gain and not our collective liberation. Oftentimes, it's against our collective liberation.
Yes, and that is it does continue to present a big challenge in our community, and as you said, even not just here but also abroad as well, we see the similar pattern.
Yes.
And,
But we have a way. I think the example we set in East New York, beat the machine, take them out of the power positions. They couldn't stop us. They got unions against us. They had more money. We hit the ground. We went to the barber shops. We went to the beauty salons. We went to the block association meetings. We went to tenant association meetings. We went to our senior citizens. We went to some of our clergy, and we said, hey, y'all, there's a new force in town. I got up and disrupted Governor Cuomo's State of the State address. That's the most prestigious address, like the State of the Union for the president. 2,000 of his people in there. And I decided in my second year in the state assembly, I'm not going to let this hypocrite have a peaceful State of the State. I got up there, and y'all can see it. Go on YouTube and put in Charles Barron interrupts Governor Cuomo. You'll see it for yourself. And I said, Governor, you're a hypocrite. Call them out. And that disruption got across every media, every newspaper. And this man called me up next year and said, Assemblyman, I'm not your enemy. I'm not your enemy. One black man, one African, standing up to the most powerful man in New York State, the governor, Andrew Cuomo, called me up. Most people die to meet with him. And he said, I want to bring a park into your district. I want to call it they want to call it the Shirley Chisholm Park. And I want you to stand with me. I'll give you all the credit. I said to him, first of all, Governor, you never met a black man like me. You're used to a different kind. I would never stand with you. And you can't bring me no credibility. Standing with you takes credibility away from me. But Governor, bring in the park. My people need it. You know he brought that park in? He got some other Negroes to stand with him. I didn't go, but we got a new Shirley Chisholm Park, for $20 million, and it's a nice park. And we got it without being a sycophant, kissing parts of the anatomy we ought not be kissing.
That's right. Yeah. What are some other examples of some ways that you've made a difference in your district?
Oh, here's a big difference. When I took on the issue along with my wife of freeing political prisoners, I knew that Jalil Montecalm was in almost 50 years, and Herman Bell was in for decades, and so was Seth Hayes. I went before the Black, Latino, and Asian caucus in the city council and the state assembly, and I said, hey, y'all, we need to free these political prisoners. Yes, they were my brothers. And yes, they were in the Black Liberation Army. And yes, they had it out, went to war with the police. The police killed them, and some police died too. But we know that when you get 25 to life, that means you're up for parole in 25 years. And that parole decision must be based on time served, not your initial crime. You can't change the initial crime. And all of them had impeccable time served, but they hit them with 2 more. To 25 became 30, 30 became 35, 35 became 40, 40 became 50. So we got to let them out. Time served. You know, I got the letter, and we got all 3 of them out. And let me tell you about Letitia James, the state attorney general. On Jalil Montecalm's case, a white judge said, what? He's been in there for almost 50 years. It's COVID all in there. He can die in there. He didn't get a death sentence. I'm letting him out. The white judge said he's released. The black attorney general, Letitia James, appealed his decision because she was sucking up to Andrew Cuomo. And he was left in there. Caught COVID. Thank God he survived it. And then we got him out months later by the parole process. That I'm very proud of. The reparations bill I'm very proud of. I'm very proud to say that we were able to bring a $20 million youth center, community center, and young people are running it and getting paid. Man Up Inc. is a group that is interrupting violence, and we got 75 jobs from them, the $7 million budget. Andre T. Mitchell, they're in there bringing crime down. Since we've been in East New York, yes, it's some of the highest crime in the city and all of that, but we brought it down the 20-something years we've been in. It's been going down in every category. And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we have 3 new schools built from the ground up with science labs, art labs, you know, you name it, we got it in that school. A gymnasium, a pool, and instruction, more culturally relevant curriculum, all of that we've been building into our school system and new schools. We got a brand new library and another one that's renovated that looks brand new. All of that we got in. We have a CUNY initiative, a Black Male Initiative of CUNY. And in our 14 years or 34 years, we were able to bring in $50 million worth of scholarships for CUNY students, with a Black Male Initiative getting $2.5 million every year. I could spend the rest of this broadcast talking about the accomplishments, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
And CUNY is what is it, City University of New York?
New York.
Yes. So now that you and your wife are not in politics, I know you're not retiring. So what's the focus now of your revolutionary work?
Good question. 2 things. One, we are training others to take those positions. You know, my wife retired. She's undefeated. And in the last election in 2023, the machine got together and they got the seat back from me. Our people, the person who ran against me, we done beat him 3 times. So most of the people stayed home, said, oh, Charles got it. They took it for granted. And they went all out to get their vote out. So you got 3,000 votes. I got 2,600. So we're out of that process, but we're going to get that back with Karan Allen and Alice Lohman. And we have a whole bunch of young people, Melinda Perkins and Kiru Chichiru. They're all being trained to run and win these seats. Term limits is in the city council, so these young people will get a chance. That's one thing. The second thing we're doing is next week, on the 26th, we're having a National Black Radical Political Convention. The National Black Radical Political Convention. And that is to build on the work of the National Black Political Convention that occurred in Gary, Indiana in 1972, where over 10,000 Black people from socialists, Democrats, Republicans, communists, nationalists all came together and had a convention. It was supposed to start an independent party, but the neoliberals of the Democratic Party ripped off the convention, and they're the ones who benefited most. So we're going to bring in a National Black Radical Convention. Our first convention was in Pittsburgh, and we had about 60 people show up from 10 different states, repeated that in Maryland, and now we're going to do one online. So just go to National Black NB Political PR Radical Convention, NPRC, and you'll see online where you can register for that. We need to build that. And then in Florida, I'm working with the African People's Socialist Party and the Democratic Uhuru Movement, International Independent Democratic Uhuru Movement. And we have a National Black Radical Political School under the leadership of Omali Yeshitela from the African People's Socialist Party. So we're going to develop radicals to get into the electoral arena, get that power like we had. Because once you have power, it's the great equalizer.
All right. Yeah, we had talked earlier too offline about the Omali Yeshitela case in Uhuru 3. and how that's connected to the reparations movement. Some people may not even be familiar with it at all, or just a little bit familiar with it. So maybe we could just talk about that briefly as we about to wind down the show.
Yes, let me tell you something. One of the leading, if not the leading, theorists, revolutionary theorists in the 21st century is Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party. You know, you have to have a theory to guide your practice. If you don't have no theory, no vision, it's like flying a plane with no radar. You'll be moving, but you don't know where you're landing. So Omali Yeshitela provides that revolutionary theory to guide our practice. He's been at it for over 50 years. I think they started the African People's Socialist Party in 1972. And a few years later, they got white folk to be in solidarity with them to bring them reparations, to go to the white community and say you should pay the African People's Socialist Party reparations. So he's been doing reparations. He's been doing, petitions to the UN and all of that. So all of a sudden, a Russian national says that they want to form an alliance. And so Omali and Yeshitela and them said, we're not down with Ukraine, where Russia has a right to defend itself against NATO. Well, the system didn't like that. So they claim that he and the white supporters of his movement were foreign agents of Russia. And they didn't give that information to the Attorney General. So therefore, they are charged with being a foreign agent of Russia, and they could possibly go to jail for 10 years. So they charged them with being a foreign agent and charged them with conspiring to be a foreign agent. I went to the trial. It was a tremendous trial. The FBI, they had a case that was no case. They only had FBI agents testifying, so they didn't prove their case. The Uhuru movement had some dynamic lawyers. One of them was the son of Naim Akbar. He was fantastic. They didn't even put Omali on the stand. They just said, we want to show his tapes, and you'll see that the only people he was an agent for was Black people. And an all-white jury said he was innocent. They were not guilty of being an agent. However, in a very contradictory way, they said we are going to find them guilty of conspiring to be an agent. How could you say they were an agent and then find them guilty for conspiring? They were just trying to give the state something. So the bottom line is on November 25th, they will be sentenced for the conspiracy. They could get 5 years. We send in letters, hundreds of letters, so you can look up the Uhuru movement and get your letter in. And then on November 2nd, they're going to be marching on the White House. But we believe we're going to win that on appeal because it's such a glaring contradiction. You can't be charging somebody of being conspiring to be something you said they were innocent of, that they didn't do. So that's the case of the Uhuru 3.
And you shared with me, though, that they were saying that the Russian agents were encouraging them to focus on reparations.
Yeah. They said Russia had to tell Omali Yeshitela to do reparations so that they can cause division in America. They said Omali Yeshitela running a young lady for the city council and Russia supporting that, saying they doing that to create division in America. Omali said, I am an alliance. I'm in an alliance with Russia, with the Russian national. I'm not a employee of them. They don't need Russia to tell us to do reparations. We've been doing that before we even had any talks with anybody in Russia. And the guy that was supporting them was with an NGO, a non-government organization. That was not the Russian government. The law says that if you are working on behalf of the government, which they were not, it was an NGO. Even the FBI leader of the investigation said the guy was not a Russian government official.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for just everything you shared with us today, your wisdom and your work that you've done in New York and your work that you've done for people of African descent. We'll just close out. Just have you say whatever words you like to say as your closing remarks as we wind this down.
Well, first of all, I want to thank your father, who I met, Hobart James, and he did some fantastic work in New York around
Thank
the
you.
world, and he was very conscious, and he knew it was a tactic, a strategy. Brothers and sisters, electoral politics is not a panacea. We are not going to be able to vote our way to freedom, to liberation. It is a tactic. It is a strategy that we should use to disrupt them sending us sellouts, traitors, sycophant blacks, black faces in high places. We should fight that and bring in elected revolutionaries, activists, conscious people committed to us. That is just one strategy. But whatever you be, a doctor, be a revolutionary doctor. A teacher, be a revolutionary teacher. Whatever you do, you should have a revolutionary ideology, because this is the greatest time to be alive. Africa's on the rise. Capitalism is an empire that's fallen. All great empires rise and fall. The Roman Empire rose, fell. The Ottoman Empire rose, fell. The British said the sun never set on the British Empire. Now it's a little cloudy mud pat in Europe talking about Brexit. And the American Empire rose, it is now fallen. Stand up for your liberation.
I say yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Charles Barron. We appreciate you. Appreciate your work. Look forward to seeing those young folks getting trained up and groomed up and passing on the baton. That's so important in our movement. And I'm sure they appreciate your wisdom and wisdom from your wife as well, Inez. And thank you for shouting out my father. I'll definitely let him know if he's not listening that you did. And you've been listening to Reparations Now podcast. Again, I'm your host, Brother Jumoke Ifetayo. We've had quite a few comments, and we thank you for making those comments. Also, just wanted to know this, remind you that this show is being sponsored by Reparations United, and we are thankful for their support so that we're able to bring you these shows twice a month. And again, we want to just give a big thanks out to Brother Charles Barron. Also want to acknowledge my engineer, Brother Major. And again, we encourage you to support this show, to subscribe to this show, and pass it on and share with others. Reparations now, reparations now, reparations now.